It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in the suburbs of Brooksville. The sun hung low, sprinkling gold on freshly mowed lawns. Karen Wilkins, a middle-aged woman known for her sharp tongue and quicker judgments, was sitting on her porch sipping iced tea. Across the street, a young black boy, about 14 or 15, was walking his dog, a golden retriever named Max. He wore headphones and hummed softly, lost in his own world. Karen's eyes narrowed. Who is that? He doesn't live here, she muttered. Moments later, she grabbed her phone. 911? Yes, there's a suspicious boy wandering around my neighborhood. I think he's casing houses. Within minutes, the wail of police sirens echoed through the street. The boy looked up, confused, as two squad cars pulled in front of him. Hands where I can see them, an officer shouted. The boy, frightened, raised his hands slowly. I'm just walking my dog. Before the situation could escalate, another car pulled up. A tall man in a dark blue uniform stepped out, his presence commanding, his face familiar to every officer there. It was Captain Marcus Reed, the head of the Brooksville Police Department. What's going on here? He asked firmly. One of the officers hesitated. Sir, we received a call about a suspicious person. This young man, Captain Reid turned, and his face softened immediately. Suspicious person? That's my son, Jordan. The entire street fell silent. Karen's face went pale as all eyes turned toward her. She stammered, I didn't know, I just thought. Captain Reid's expression hardened. You thought what? That a black kid walking his dog didn't belong here? Karen tried to defend herself. No, I was just trying to protect the neighborhood. Jordan looked down, tears in his eyes. Dad, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Captain Reid placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. I know, son. You didn't have to. He then turned back to the officers. You can all go. There's no crime here, just another dangerous assumption. As the police cars drove away, Karen stood frozen, humiliated, and speechless. The entire neighborhood had seen everything. Captain Reid gave her one last look, calm, but filled with disappointment. Next time, ma'am, maybe call your conscience before you call the cops. He walked away with his son, leaving Karen alone with the weight of her actions. From that day on, Karen never looked at anyone in her neighborhood the same way again. The next morning, Brooksville was buzzing. Everyone had heard about what happened. The woman who called the cops on the police captain's son. Karen tried to go about her day like nothing happened, but she couldn't escape the whispers. Neighbors who used to wave now looked away. Parents who once smiled crossed the street when she passed by. Her phone kept lighting up with messages. Some were angry, others mocking. Someone had even recorded the entire incident and posted it online. The caption read, Karen calls cops on police captain's son for walking his dog. It went viral overnight. Karen sat on her couch, staring at the screen. Every hateful comment felt like a slap. Serves her right. Maybe now she'll learn what racism looks like. She's the reason people can't feel safe in their own neighborhood. Tears welled up in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't angry at the world, she was angry at herself. Jordan sat quietly at the kitchen table, stirring his cereal without eating it. Captain Reid watched his son with concern. You okay, buddy? He asked softly. Jordan shrugged. I don't know. I didn't do anything wrong, Dad. But everyone looked at me like I did. Reid sighed deeply. I know. And that's what hurts the most, when you're punished for just existing. Jordan looked up. Is this gonna happen again? Captain Reid hesitated. He wished he could promise it wouldn't. I hope not, son. But what we can do is teach people. Show them what respect really means. Jordan nodded slowly, though the sadness didn't leave his eyes. There was a knock on Captain Reid's door. When he opened it, Karen stood there, nervous, holding a small box of muffins. Captain Reid. I wanted to apologize, she began, her voice trembling. What I did was wrong. I didn't think. I just saw your son. And Reid cut her off gently. You saw what you expected to see. She nodded, ashamed. I've been reading the comments online. I've been thinking about how I'd feel if that happened to my kid. I wanted to make it right. From behind Reid, Jordan peeked out. Karen's eyes softened. Hi, Jordan. I'm really sorry for what I did. You didn't deserve that. Jordan stayed quiet for a moment, then said softly, it's okay. Just don't do it to anyone else. That hit her harder than any insult online ever could. Karen blinked away tears. I won't. I promise. Reid nodded. Change starts when we stop defending our mistakes and start learning from them. Karen smiled weakly. I'll remember that. She placed the box on the porch and walked away, not forgiven yet, but finally starting to understand. Weeks later, Karen joined a local community group that worked on promoting diversity and empathy. She even volunteered at the town's youth center, where she met kids from every background. including Jordan. At first, everyone avoided her. But over time, her actions began to speak louder than her past. One afternoon, Jordan waved at her from across the basketball court. She smiled and waved back. Captain Reed, watching from his car, smiled too. Sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones that make us better people, and for Karen, that 911 call would forever be the moment that changed her life. It would make a powerful ending to the whole series. This part shows how Karen truly changes when life gives her another moment to prove what she's learned. A few months had passed since the incident that shook Brooksville. Spring had arrived, bringing warm breezes, blooming flowers, and, for Karen, a quiet sense of redemption. She had spent the last few months trying to rebuild her reputation. She volunteered at the youth center, attended diversity workshops, and even helped organize a community unity day with Captain Reed's team. People were beginning to see a different side of her, a side she never knew she had. But deep down, Karen wondered, would anyone ever truly forgive me? She didn't know the answer, not yet. One Saturday afternoon, Karen was driving past the local park when she saw a small crowd gathering near the basketball court. She parked and walked over, curious. Two teenage boys, one white, one black, were arguing. The white boy's father, a tall man in a business suit, was shouting at the black teen, "You scratched my car, didn't you? I saw you near it earlier," he barked. "I didn't touch your car, sir," the black teen protested, his hands shaking. Karen's heart stopped. The boy looked about Jordan's age. The man turned to his phone. "You know what? I'm calling the cops. Let's see how you explain yourself to them." Karen felt a rush of déjà vu. The air around her grew heavy. This was her moment, the same situation she once mishandled so badly, but this time, she wouldn't be silent. "Excuse me," Karen said firmly, stepping between the man and the boy. "I saw what happened. That boy didn't touch your car. The scratch was already there when you parked." The man frowned. "And who are you?" "Someone who used to make the same kind of mistake you're making right now," she said evenly. "Maybe you should put that phone down before you regret it." The man hesitated, confused by her calm confidence. Karen turned to the crowd. "Anyone else here see him damage the car?" A few people murmured no. Someone even showed a phone video proving the boy had been playing basketball the whole time. The man's face turned red. "Fine. My mistake." He turned and stormed off. Karen exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. The boy looked up at her. "Thank you, ma'am." She smiled softly. "Don't thank me. Just remember, speak up for yourself, but never let anger turn into hate." Karen sat on her porch, sipping tea as the sun dipped below the trees. A familiar police car pulled up in front of her house. Captain Reed stepped out, smiling. "I heard about what happened at the park," he said. "Seems like someone's been learning." Karen chuckled. "Still trying. I just didn't want another kid to go through what Jordan did." Reed nodded. "You know, redemption isn't about forgetting the past. It's about proving you've changed when it matters most." Karen looked down, tears glimmering. "I just hope people see that." "They will," Reed said. "They already are." From the passenger seat, Jordan waved at her. She waved back, this time with a real smile. Months later, at the community center's annual Unity celebration, Karen stood beside Captain Reed and Jordan as they cut the ribbon for a new neighborhood outreach program, one designed to teach kids about empathy, equality, and justice. As the crowd clapped, Karen looked at Jordan and said quietly, "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Jordan grinned. "Everyone deserves one, if they're willing to change." The three of them stood together, proof that sometimes, the most powerful transformations come from the hardest lessons, and as the sun set over Brooksville, Karen finally felt what she'd been searching for all along. Peace. A full year had passed since that unforgettable day in Brooksville, the day that changed Karen's life forever. Her garden was now full of color. Kids waved to her when they passed by. Parents smiled and chatted instead of avoiding her. Karen had become a familiar face at the community center, mentoring teens about understanding, empathy, and respect. She had truly changed, but deep down, she still carried a quiet fear, a fear that the world would never truly forget who she used to be. One rainy afternoon, Karen was making cookies for the neighborhood bake sale when she heard a knock on her door. When she opened it, a young woman stood there, maybe in her mid-20s, drenched from the rain. "Are you Mrs. Wilkins?" she asked. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" The woman hesitated, her eyes red from crying. "My name's Naomi. I'm the sister of a boy who got arrested here 3 years ago, because of a false call." Karen froze. Her hands went cold. It wasn't Jordan she was talking about. This was before that day, before Karen ever realized the damage her judgments could cause. Naomi continued, voice trembling. "You called the cops on him because you thought he was stealing mail. He was just delivering flyers for his school fundraiser. That call ruined his record. He dropped out the next year." Karen's throat tightened. I remember. I didn't know." Tears welled up in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I was so blind back then. Naomi looked down, silent. I've changed, Karen whispered. But that doesn't fix what I did to him, does it? Naomi shook her head slightly. He never got an apology. He thought nobody cared. Karen swallowed hard. Where is he now? Naomi hesitated. He works at the youth center downtown. Maybe you can tell him yourself. That evening, Karen went to the youth center. The rain had stopped, and the world smelled of fresh earth. Inside, she saw a young man cleaning paintbrushes. His name tag read Ethan. Karen approached him slowly. Ethan? He looked up. Yeah? I'm Karen Wilkins. I think I owe you something. He frowned, trying to remember. Then his eyes widened, recognition flashing across his face. You're her. The lady who called the cops on me. Karen nodded, ashamed. Yes. And I've regretted it every single day since I realized what I did. I can't undo it, but I want to make it right, however I can. Ethan crossed his arms, silent for a moment. You know, I used to hate you. Every time I saw a police car, I'd freeze up. I thought the world would always see me as a threat. Karen's voice broke. I'm sorry, Ethan. I was wrong. I see things differently now. I see people now. Ethan looked at her, searching for a lie, but finding none. Finally, he sighed. You can't change what happened, but you can help change what happens next. Karen smiled weakly. Tell me how. A few months later, the three of them, Karen, Ethan, and Captain Reed, launched the Healing Project, a community program that brought together victims and reformers to talk about racial bias, forgiveness, and accountability. Karen shared her story publicly. Not as an excuse, but as a warning. Change doesn't start with laws or lectures, she said during the opening event. It starts with admitting you were wrong, and deciding you'll never be that person again. The crowd applauded, some with tears in their eyes. Ethan stood beside her, nodding. And it starts with forgiveness, even when it's hard. From the front row, Jordan and Captain Reed smiled proudly. Months later, on a bright morning, Karen's phone rang again. It was Captain Reed. Karen, he said warmly, there's a young volunteer here who wants to join your program. Says he's inspired by your story. Karen chuckled softly. Well, tell him we've got plenty of room. She hung up and looked out her window, where kids of every color laughed together on the sidewalk. She smiled. Once upon a time, she called the cops out of fear. Now, when the phone rang, it was because people needed help, not hate, and that, she realized, was the greatest redemption of all. This part brings everything full circle. Karen, Captain Reed, Jordan, and Ethan all face a new challenge that tests whether the lessons they've learned can stand strong when the whole town is watching. Point 2. Years had passed since the day Karen made the worst decision of her life. 2 years since she changed everything about herself. She was no longer the woman who called the cops. Now, she was Karen Wilkins, co-founder of the Healing Project, a program that had reached beyond Brooksville, inspiring neighboring towns to open their own chapters. The community had begun to heal, but healing isn't always peaceful. Sometimes, it's tested. It was a warm summer afternoon when chaos struck again. A viral video exploded across social media, a black teenager being handcuffed outside the Brooksville Mall. The caption read, "Teen accused of shoplifting, store owner says he looked suspicious." By nightfall, the entire town was divided. Some defended the officers, others demanded justice. The boy's face wasn't clear in the video, but the anger was loud enough to shake the whole city. And then, the truth came out. The boy in the video was Jordan Reed. Karen's phone rang late that night. It was Captain Reed. Karen, his voice was strained, breaking slightly. It's Jordan. Someone recorded him being detained at the mall. He didn't do anything wrong. Karen's chest tightened. Oh my God. I'll be right there. When she arrived, reporters were already crowding outside the police station. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions. Inside, Captain Reed stood beside his son, furious but composed. Jordan looked tired, scared, the same look he'd had the first time all this began years ago. Karen walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't deserve this, Jordan. None of this. He nodded. They thought I stole a watch. I didn't even go near the jewelry counter. Reed clenched his fists. We'll clear this up. But the damage is already done, again. The next morning, the town gathered at City Hall. Microphones lined the podium. Every major local outlet was there. Captain Reed stood before them, calm yet firm. My son was wrongfully detained yesterday because someone assumed guilt based on appearance. We've been here before, and we promised it would change. He paused, then looked toward Karen. This time, it will. Karen stepped forward, surprising everyone. She took a deep breath. I once made that same kind of call, she said, her voice echoing across the hall. And it took me losing everything to understand how much pain that ignorance causes. But I learned something: people don't change from being yelled at. They change when they're given the chance to understand. The room was silent, she continued, so we're not here to destroy anyone. We're here to demand better, from our police, our stores, and ourselves. Her words struck deep. Even the reporters lowered their cameras for a moment. Later, the store released security footage. It showed clearly that Jordan hadn't stolen anything. The store clerk had mistaken him for another teen who'd run off minutes earlier. The clerk, trembling and ashamed, came forward at the next community meeting. I was wrong, he admitted. I saw what I wanted to see. Not what was true. Karen walked up and placed a hand on his arm. I've been there too, she said quietly. Now, you can help us fix what's broken. Together, they announced a new partnership, See Beyond the Surface, a town-wide initiative teaching stores, schools, and officers how to recognize bias before it turns into harm. Months later, Brooksville became a national example of reform. Schools taught empathy. Businesses held workshops on diversity. The Healing Project expanded across the state, and on a warm evening at the town park, the same place where Karen once stood frozen in fear, she stood again, this time surrounded by laughter, music, and unity. Jordan threw a basketball toward Ethan. Captain Red watched proudly. Karen smiled, her heart full. Funny, she said softly. All of this started with one bad call. Reed looked at her. Yeah, he said. And it ended with the right one. The crowd cheered as the sun dipped below the horizon, a symbol that even in the darkest stories, light can return.